The void burned red when we emerged. Kale's ship lurched out of the warp into a storm of fire and wreckage, a graveyard of broken cruisers, drifting bodies, and distant planets torn open like wounds. Vox signals screamed across the channels, half prayers, half madness. The moment reality solidified, I felt the pain like static in my bones. Something enormous was calling, echoing through the hull. A god, maybe, or a thing that wanted to be one. Kale stood on the command deck, surrounded by her officers, ashen-faced mortals clinging to ritual instead of reason. "We've entered the Cadian expanse," she said, voice shaking but sharp. "There's a battle below. Imperial Guard regiments holding the line against heretics." Her gaze shifted toward me. And worse, I didn't need her to finish. I could smell it. Blood, rage, old metal soaked in centuries of slaughter. It stung like acid at the back of my throat. Kale's eyes glinted with a strange light. "They worship violence. The World Eaters. Once space marines, now monsters. Servants of the blood god. Guess I'll fit right in," I said. Her hand twitched toward her wrist. "You mock what you don't understand, lady," I growled. "I am what I don't understand." The ship groaned, the hull trembling as drop pods launched from its underbelly. Kale turned to her bridge crew. "Prepare orbital strike protocols." "Logan," she hesitated, then tossed me a worn metal emblem bearing a stylized skull with twin-headed eagles. "If you survive, show them this. It might buy you a heartbeat before they burn you alive." Comforting, the drop pod sealed around me with a hiss. The floor beneath my boots trembled. As we entered atmosphere, the pod shook violently, flames licking through cracks in the outer plating. Through the viewport slit, I saw the planetan ocean of black mud and red sky. Cities reduced to skeletons, rivers running thick with blood. The closer we fell, the louder the screaming became, not from the coms, not from the dying, from the ground itself. Then the impact hit. The pod slammed into a trench and tore through 3 meters of The hatch blew open, and the smell of death flooded in, warm, metallic, familiar. Soldiers in flak armor screamed and fired wildly, lasguns flashing in the dark. One shot hit my shoulder. I didn't flinch. "Hold your fire," a sergeant bellowed. He saw the emblem, recognized it, or at least wanted to believe he did. "Inquisitorial envoy. By the throne, what are you?" "Long story," I muttered, stepping past him. "Short ending." The battlefield stretched before me, thousands of guardsmen, burning tanks, and red-armored giants moving through the smoke like walking wars. Chainswords roared, bolters thundered, and the sky bled fire. The World Eaters had arrived. I smelled them before I saw them: sweat, blood, rusted armor. When the first one came through the mist, I thought for a moment it wasn't a man at all. His armor was the color of old wounds, etched with skulls and 8 pointed stars. His faceplate was a snarl frozen in brass, and when he spoke, his voice came through the Vox grill like grinding steel. "Another offering for Khorne." He swung his chain axe, and I met it with claws. Sparks flew like fireflies. The impact sent shockwaves through the mud. He was faster than I expected, stronger, too. Every blow carried centuries of hate, but I'd been fighting monsters since before his kind existed. He screamed, "Blood for the blood god." I roared back, "Come and take it." We tore into each other like animals. My claws sank through ceramite, slicing deep. His axe cleaved through my ribs, my spine snapping before healing kicked in. The smell of my own burning flesh filled the air. I drove my claws through his chestplate, twisted and tore. When he fell, I didn't feel triumph, just the silence between heartbeats, and then the next roar of the horde. Dozens more. They came running, mad with fury. Bolters barked, shrapnel tore through me. Flesh knit, bones reformed. The healing hurt worse each time, like the warp itself was punishing me for surviving. I moved through them like a storm, cutting, tearing, screaming. For the first time in decades, I wasn't holding back. Somewhere above, Kale watched through the ship's augers. She would call it divine wrath, but there was nothing holy about it, just an old beast remembering what it was made for. After hours or minutes, it all blurred. I stood alone in a crater, surrounded by corpses. The mud bubbled with blood, my claws dripped black. My reflection stared back at me from the crimson water, and I didn't recognize it. The eyes looking back weren't mine. The warp shimmered around the dead. Their blood didn't soak into the ground, it rose, twisting into shapes, faces, eyes, and then voices again. "Do you feel it, Logan?" "The truth." "Go away," I rasped. "You were made to kill, not by men, not by gods, but by the universe itself. You are entropy given claws." "Shut up. Join us. The blood god already knows your name." The sky thundered crimson. Lightning cracked across the clouds, forming the 8-pointed mark of Khorne. Every drop of blood on the ground began to vibrate, singing in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. I fell to my knees. The ground pulsed. I could feel the rage pushing through me, not mine, not entirely. A tide of violence, pure and intoxicating. My claws extended on their own. My vision tunneled. I wanted to tear, to end. Then Kale's voice cut through the vox in my ear. Logan, listen to me. You are not their god. You are the weapon of the Emperor. The words hit harder than any axe. The rage broke. I drove my claws into the earth, roaring until my throat tore. The blood stopped moving. The whispers died. The storm faded. When I stood again, my claws were dull. My breath came shallow, and for the first time since I got here, I felt something like fear, not of death, of belonging. Kale's shuttle descended through the smoke, its lights cutting through the ruin. She stepped out, her robe scorched, her eyes hollow. You stopped the ritual, she said quietly. You saved thousands. Don't thank me, I muttered. I wasn't trying to. She looked at the corpses around us, hundreds of them, piled like offerings. Then what were you trying to do? I stared at the horizon, where the sky still bled red. Remember who I am, and I'm not sure I did. The wind carried the smell of blood and fire. Somewhere distant, the planet screamed again, a dying thing refusing to die. I looked up, claws retracting with a shiver. Guess this galaxy ain't got room for heroes either. Kale's voice was almost a whisper. No, only survivors. The storm began to fade, leaving the ruins silent, except for the soft hum of the Emperor's name whispered by the dying. I turned away, knowing the worst was still ahead. Because every world has its monsters, but in this one, maybe I was theirs. Space here isn't black, it breathes. I learned that the moment they threw me in the hold. The ship wasn't flying through space, it was swimming through something alive. The inquisitorial vessel Sanctus Veritas wasn't made of metal alone, it was half machine, half cathedral, its walls carved with prayers, each rivet an offering. Every corridor was lit by dying candles that never melted, their flames flickering in patterns too deliberate to be random. The engines didn't hum, they chanted, and sometimes, in the pauses between those hymns, I swore I could hear the ship answer back. Inquisitor Kale kept me under watch, not through guards, through faith. The air around her always felt colder, heavier, like even the warp was afraid of her conviction. She said we were bound for Terra, the heart of their empire, a world of billions where the Emperor himself sits dead yet alive, ruling from a golden throne that eats souls to keep him breathing. Sounded like the kind of god this place deserved. They kept me in a sanctified Celion bars etched, with wards that glowed whenever I moved too fast. The chains had been replaced by manacles of light, humming softly against my wrists. I could break them, maybe, but where would I go? Outside was madness. Inside was something worse. The warp. You don't see it through a window. You feel it. The ship shuddered in its grip, like a heartbeat. Shadows ran against the walls, but they didn't belong to anyone. And at night, if you can call it night in a place without stars, the voices came. Not like before. Softer, familiar. Logan. Sometimes it was Jean, sometimes it was Xavier. Sometimes it was every soul I'd failed to save. The first night, I ignored them. The second, I answered back. Yeah, I hear you, I muttered. You're not real. The voice laughed, warm and cold at the same time. We are as real as the pain you carry. You were built for this place, forged by hands that understood suffering. Go to hell, you're already here. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw faces in the metal. They pressed against the walls like children against glass, whispering through the seams. My claws twitched on their own, itching for something to kill. Kale visited on the 5th day, or maybe it was the 5th hour. Time didn't mean much in the warp. She entered with 2 servitors, things that used to be men, now more machine than flesh. Their faces were blank masks of steel, mouths replaced by vox pores whispering prayers. She dismissed them with a wave. You haven't eaten, she said, her voice steady but tired. Not hungry. No one ever is in the warp. It feeds you lies instead. She studied me for a long time. You've been hearing them. I didn't answer. They call to all of us, she continued, pacing slowly. But they call louder to the broken. Tell me, Logan, what do they say? Nothing worth repeating. Her eyes flicked toward the walls. You are changing. The ship feels it. The crew prays twice as hard when they pass your cell. They whisper a new name. What name? The adamantium saint. I barked a dry laugh. You people sure know how to pick titles. She didn't smile. They believe your healing is divine, that the Emperor has sent you as proof that flesh can defy death. Yeah, tell M not to count on it. Her gaze softened, just a fraction. You mock faith, but faith is all that stands between man and madness here. I've lived long enough to know madness doesn't need help. She turned to leave. Before the door closed, she looked back. If the warp speaks again, don't listen. Even silence here has a price. After she left, I sat in the dark and tried not to breathe. The air tasted wrong, too heavy, too alive. The hum of the engines deepened, the shadows thickened. Then I heard it, a low murmur like a prayer being said underwater. I rose, pressing against the bars. The sound came from beyond the cell door, a chorus. Dozens of voices speaking in perfect unison. Saint, Savior, flesh of metal, he who does not die. The temperature dropped. Frost crept across the floor in thin, spidery veins. The rune light around the bars flickered. Something moved in the corner of my vision. A ripple in the dark. Show yourself, I growled. It did. At first it looked like smoke. Then it took form, a figure made of shifting light and shadow, its face hidden behind a hood of flame. When it spoke, its voice carried every tone I'd ever known, layered into one. You are not theirs, Logan. You were born to end them. Not interested. You were made by men who thought they were gods. Now you walk among gods who are only men. Can't you see the joke? I see plenty. None of it's funny. The figure stepped closer. The air rippled around it. Your soul is not bound by their emperor. The warp cannot consume you. You are the wound made flesh. Maybe, I said, but I still bleed. Then bleed for something that matters. The lights flared. Alarms screamed through the ship. Kale's voice echoed over the Vox. Containment breach. Demonic manifestation on deck 7. The shadow smiled, or maybe I imagined it. They will never understand you. But we will. It vanished, leaving the cell door melted and the runes dead. I could have stayed, waited for Kale, explained, lead. But the air outside burned with panic, and something in me knew this wasn't over. So I ran. The corridors were chaos. Crewmen screamed prayers as the walls bled oil. Servitors sparked and collapsed, whispering half-remembered hymns. I moved on instinct, ducking under collapsing archers, claws slicing through demons that shouldn't exist. One lunged from a ceiling vent, a thing of glass teeth and tongues. I tore it apart, but its blood stuck to my skin, whispering promises in voices too sweet to ignore. By the time Kale found me, I was surrounded by corpses, human and not. My claws dripped light instead of blood. Her eyes blazed. What have you done? Saved your ship, I said. Her mouth tightened. No, Logan, you fed it. The alarms faded. The ship fell silent again, but the silence was wrong. Deep breathing. Kale looked around, then back at me. The warp responds to you. It bends around you. The story of my life. She stepped closer, the edge of her staff glowing faintly. Then maybe you're not a curse, she whispered. Maybe you're a weapon we can aim. I met her eyes. Lady, every time someone said that, it ended in blood. Then perhaps this time, she said, it ends in salvation. She walked away, and I was left in the flickering dark. The echo of that word, salvation, turning over in my head like a blade, because I knew the truth. In this universe, salvation wasn't mercy. It was war by another name. They didn't take me to a cell. They took me to a cathedral. That's the first thing I learned about this galaxy. Everything sacred here bleeds. The building rose out of the ashes like a mountain carved from bones. Towers of black stone stabbed the sky, their tips lost in the clouds of incense and smoke. Every inch of the walls was carved with prayers and skulls. The faces of martyrs staring down like judges frozen in judgment. The doors opened with the sound of thunder. They dragged me inside, chains biting deep into my wrists. The soldiers, the Astartes, they called themselves, walked with the certainty of men who had forgotten how to doubt. Each footstep echoed with the weight of faith. I didn't know what kind of god they worshipped, but from the look of this place, he didn't seem like the forgiving type. The air smelled like burnt metal and oil. Choirs sang from unseen balconies, their voices mechanical, broken, distorted through vox machine. The sound crawled through the stone-like veins. The Ultramarines left me at the base of a massive dais, where a single figure stood beneath a shaft of crimson light. She wasn't armored, not like them. Her robes were black and gold, heavy with sigils that pulsed faintly when I looked too long. Her face was pale, eyes sharp and cold, a scar running down one cheek like a line drawn by a scalpel. She held a staff capped with an aquila made of bone and metal. Inquisitor Kale, one of the soldiers, announced, "We found this creature at Site Thetanine. It bears the taint of the warp." Her gaze fixed on me. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was worse than pain. Then she said, softly, "Remove his hood." One of the Marines yanked the cloak off my head. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the scars, the claws, the unhealed burns still knitting together across my chest. "He looks human," she said at last. "Looks deceive, my lady," the Marine answered. His flesh regenerates faster than the Mechanicus will want to dissect enough. She raised a hand. Leave him with me. They hesitated. You could feel the unease ripple through their armor. Inquisitor, I said, leave. The chamber emptied. The great doors closed with a hollow boom that seemed to last forever. She circled me like a wolf, her boots echoing on the marble floor. I could feel something in her presence, like the gravity shifted wherever she walked. Power, but not the kind that shines. This was the kind that crushes. What are you? She asked. Been asking myself that for a while. I said, voice dry. Her hand shot out faster than I could react. She pressed the head of her staff against my chest. The metal burned. I smelled my own flesh cooking, but I didn't move. You will answer, she hissed. Are you a daemon, a psyker, a construct? I'm a man, I said through clenched teeth. Or I was. Impossible. No man heals like this. Lady, I've been shot, burned, drowned, and blown apart more times than I can count. And every damn time, I get back up. Don't mean I'm proud of it. She tilted her head, studying me. Your accent, your words. You are not from any Imperial world. Guess you could say I'm out of town. Her gaze hardened. Then perhaps the warp vomited you into our galaxy. Such things happen. Tears in reality. Unwanted gifts from the Imperium, whatever brought me here, I said. I didn't ask for it. No one does, she murmured. That's the tragedy. She tapped her staff once on the floor. The lights dimmed. From the ceiling descended a cage of light, runes burning across its edges. I felt my skin crawl as it wrapped around me, a psychic field, alive and suffocating. My claws hissed where they touched it. Just making sure I can't leave. I asked. No, she said. Just making sure your soul stays where it belongs. She raised a small metal device, a relic of polished brass and glass lenses. This will reveal what faith cannot see. The machine whirred. A beam of pale light swept across me. Where it touched my skin, the air shimmered in for a split second. She saw it. Something moved beneath my flesh. She stepped back. Emperor preserve us. I looked down. The light had revealed faint veins of violet energy coursing through my arms, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. They crawled up my neck, across my chest, burning like molten scars. What did you do to me? I growled. The warp touched you, she said, voice trembling but steady. It never lets go. You are a tear given shape, half flesh, half reflection. The Imperium marked you when it cast you here. Can you fix it? She almost smiled. We do not fix the warp, creature. We endure it. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. Endure. That's all I'd ever done. Decades of it. Centuries maybe. Survive. He'll repeat. She lowered the device. You should be dead 1,000 times over. Your kind would be of great use to the Imperium if you could be tamed. I met her eyes. Lady, no one's ever managed that. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned away. You will be transferred to Holy Terror for judgment. Until then, you remain my responsibility. Pray that I can convince them not to burn you alive for what you are. I smirked. You sure you're not already planning it? Not yet, she said, almost kindly. The Emperor might still find purpose in you. Even the damned have their uses. The cage dissolved. The chains fell away. She turned her back on me, walking toward the altar at the end of the hall. Follow me, Logan. I hesitated. You know my name. I didn't, she said. You told me, and I realized I had. Somewhere between the fire and the silence, I'd whispered it. Maybe to her, maybe to whatever was listening through her. Either way, it wasn't mine anymore as I followed her down the long corridor. The walls seemed to move, carvings shifting in the candlelight, eyes of stone tracking me. I could hear the faint whisper of prayers twisting into screams. The air shimmered. The same violet pulse under my skin echoed in the marble itself. I wasn't just in their world now. Their world was inside me, and deep down, something was changing, something hungry, ancient, and cruel. There are nights when the sky feels too heavy, when even the stars seem to hold their breath. That was the kind of night it was. The last night I knew the name of my own world. The cabin stood quiet in the snow, a lonely thing buried under northern silence. I'd spent years pretending that silence could drown the beast inside me, pretending that the wars were over, pretending I was done fighting. But the woods knew better. They always do. The air changed first. The smell ozone, copper, blood, then the hum, like machinery buried beneath the crust of the earth, grinding up through my bones. Every instinct screamed, and I'd learned to trust my instincts long before I learned to trust men. I stepped outside, barefoot on the frost. The moon hung broken between clouds, and then the sky opened. That it wasn't light that came through. It was something alive, colors that didn't belong to nature, liquid thoughts spilling across the stars. The crack in reality pulsed like a wound, and inside it I could see movement, faces, claws, and the promise of violence. My hand went to the claws in my arms out of reflex, but the world had already decided for me. The ground buckled. The forest folded into itself, branches turning to black glass. I reached for the door, but it was too late. The air turned to liquid fire. The last sound I heard before I fell was my own scream being torn apart by static. Falling wasn't falling, it was disassembly. My body stretched until I forgot what shape I was supposed to be. I could hear my heart in 1,000 rhythms, all out of sync. Voices slid between the beats whispering my name, but not like any human ever had. Logan wept, child of pain. They said it with hunger, with worship, with laughter. When the pain stopped, I thought I was dead. But the dead don't breathe smoke. The dead don't taste ash. I opened my eyes and saw a battlefield. The sky was sick, a bruised red stitched with black lightning. The ground was charred bone and rust. In the distance, titanic silhouettes marched, colossi of armor and sanctified steel, each step booming like thunder through the valley. The air vibrated with chanting, vox prayers, half mechanical, half desperate. I'd seen war, but never like this. I staggered up. My body healed itself before I could even notice the damage. But something was wrong with the healing. It stung, like I was fighting against the air itself. I spat blood, rubbed it between my fingers, and it shimmered faintly violet. Not human anymore. The first body I found was a soldier in blue armor, easily 8 feet tall. His armor was carved with scripture. Wax seals still clung to the plates, fluttering in the wind like dying moths. His helmet had been split in half by something too sharp to be human. Steam hissed from the wound. His blood smelled of metal and sanctity. I knelt beside him and felt the faint warmth still there. Whoever these people were, they hadn't been gone long. Then I heard it, a sound that didn't belong in any throat, a choir of machine spirits screaming through metal lungs. Out of the storm walked warriors, giants in the same blue armor, alive this time. They moved like tanks and priests all at once, every step a sermon. Their weapons were cannons built into their arms. The ground cracked beneath their boots. I should have stayed down, but curiosity's always been a bad habit of mine. I raised my hands. Hey, I'm not looking for a fight. The closest one turned. His voice came through his helmet, deep and hollow. Unregistered life. Xeno's corruption probable. Yeah, nice to meet you too. The first bolt round hit before I finished the sentence. It tore through my side, exploded, and painted the ground with blood and smoke. The second hit my chest. I dropped, more from shock than pain. Healing doesn't make you immune to agony. It just makes you live through more of it. By the time I looked up, they were surrounding me, 7 of them. Weapons aim. Gold seals fluttering. I'm not, I started. Silence. One of them, taller than the rest, raised a hand. His armor was marked with a white skull on a field of blue. You bleed warped int. I had no idea what that meant, but it didn't sound friendly. You shoot a guy twice, he's gonna bleed something. They didn't laugh. These weren't men who laughed. Then the ground erupted. It was a sound like the universe coughing up its own lungs. A fissure split the earth behind them, vomiting fire and shadows. From it crawled shapes to many limbs, to many faces, each screaming over the others. They smelled like burned meat and perfume. I'd seen demons before, but these things were wrong. The blue giants turned and opened fire. The bolts lit up the fog in bursts of holy flame. For a second, I thought they were winning until one of the creatures wrapped around a soldier and drank him through his armor. I ran before I could think better of it. My claws came out with that old, satisfying snick. I hit the first demon midly. Its flesh folded like wet paper. Its blood burned like acid, but I kept swinging. The next one hissed words into my head, promises I didn't understand. I tore its jaw off and kept going. The air thickened with the stink of ozone and sorrow. Every kill made the world pulse brighter. Like I was cutting open a wound the planet wanted kept shut. When it was over, the ground steamed with light. My arms dripped something that shimmered between gold and black. The soldiers stared. The one with the skull helm approached slowly, lowering his weapon. You fight like a servant of the Emperor, he said, voice crackling. But your soul stinks of the Imperium. Yeah, I muttered. The story of my life. He regarded me a long time, then gestured. 2 of his men stepped forward with heavy chains carved with holy script. You will come with us. The Inquisition will judge what you are. I almost laughed. You people always got someone to judge, huh? No one answered. They shackled me, the metal biting into my skin with a hiss that felt like burning faith. I could have broken them, but something in the air made me hesitate. A pressure, vast and sentient, pressing down on every inch of me. Like the sky itself was watching. As they marched me through the ruins, I looked back at the rift still glowing in the distance. It pulsed like a heartbeat, whispering soft words only I could hear. Welcome. Weapon X. Welcome to the 41st Millennium. And for the first time in a long time, I realized what fear really was, because this place didn't want to kill me. It wanted to use me. They called Terra the cradle of humanity. They lied. When Kale's ship broke through the last of the warp storms, I saw it for the first time, the Emperor's world. Not a planet, a corpse pretending to be alive. Every inch of its surface was metal, towers upon towers, hive upon hive, choking the sky in smoke and faith. Billions lived here, billions prayed, and the air still reeked of rot. From orbit, the whole thing pulsed faintly golden, like a dying heart kept beating by ritual alone. Kale stood beside me at the viewport, her voice hushed, almost reverent. The cradle of man, she whispered, the light of the Imperium. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that this place wasn't built for the living. The planet was a tomb that refused to stay buried. When we landed, they didn't welcome us. They examined us. Rows of black-armored custodies lined the hangar, motionless and perfect, their halberds like extensions of their will. The air around them hummed with psychic weight. They didn't speak, didn't need to. You felt their judgment, like standing naked under the gaze of gods who'd forgotten mercy. Kale stepped forward, offering seals and prayers. I stayed behind her, silent. The tallest custodian approached. His voice was like thunder pressed through glass. The Inquisition brings a mutation to the throne world. Kale didn't flinch. He is a weapon, not a threat. Every weapon becomes a threat, the custodian said, eyes narrowing toward me. What name? Kale hesitated. Logan, designation, unknown. Gene seed incompatible, healing beyond record. Abomination, another murmured. I growled low in my throat. Say that again. Kale shot me a glare that could have killed. Logan, silence. The custodian turned away, gesturing. The ecclesiarchy will decide his fate. They took me through corridors that stretched for miles, every wall carved with images of angels and martyrs. The chanting never stopped, low, constant, a hum of endless worship. They said it was to keep the Emperor alive. I wondered if he ever asked to be. We descended deeper into the catacombs until the air itself tasted like dust and incense. That's where I met them, the priests. Dozens of them in crimson robes, faces hidden by gold masks. They circled me like vultures. Kale spoke of what I'd done, the demons I'd killed, the ship I'd saved, the blood I'd shed. Every word made them lean closer. Finally, one stepped forward. His mask was cracked down the middle. You heal faster than any Astartes, he rasped. You bleed but do not die. You walk untouched through the warp. Tell me, child, of another age who made you. No one worth remembering, I said. He chuckled, the sound brittle as bone. Modesty does not suit a miracle. Iente a miracle, padre. Just a bad habit that won't die. The priests murmured to each other, the sound like rustling wings. One held up a fragment of parchment, old as the stars. There is prophecy, he said. A man of unending flesh will come from beyond the veil, the saint of iron and blood. He will not die until the Emperor wakes. Kale's eyes flicked toward me, uncertain. It could be coincidence. Or destiny. Another priest whispered, look at him, the flesh remade, the deathless man. Perhaps the throne has called him. I almost laughed. Almost you think I'm your messiah. Hate to disappoint, but I ain't savin' anyone. Every savior says that before the first miracle, the cracked mask priest said. They took me to the sanctum of silence after that, part chapel, part prison. No windows, no sound, just the faint hum of machines buried in the walls. Kale visited once a day, bringing food I didn't eat. She looked more worn each time. They want to test you, she said finally. The ecclesiarchy believes you're touched by the Emperor. The Ordo Malleus thinks you're a daemon host, waiting to bloom. Guess I can't please everyone. Her voice softened. Do you ever wonder why you survived the warp unchanged? Yeah, I said quietly. Every damn minute. That night, I dreamed. Not the kind that ends when you wake, the kind that follows. I stood in a golden hall so vast it made mountains feel small. At its end sat a figure of light taller than any man, radiant, immobile. The Emperor, his eyes burned like suns, but his face was dead, frozen in eternal pain. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't move. Then his voice filled my head, not sound. Just knowing, you should not be here. I didn't ask to be. The warp brought you for a reason. What reason? To remind them what they've become. The light fled, the ground cracked. I saw cities burning, stars dying, men killing men in his name. And over it all, his whisper soft, mournful, infinite. They worship my corpse and call it faith. They feed on hope I no longer have. You are not their savior, Logan. You are their mirror. The vision shattered. I woke, gasping, sweat freezing on my skin. The walls around me were alive with faint whispers, like veins pulsing beneath steel. Kale burst in moments later, pale and trembling. The Custodes felt it, she said. The entire palace did. What happened? I saw him who? The man on your golden chair. She stared at me in silence. That's impossible, lady, I said, standing slowly. I've been through worse than impossible. The door behind her slammed open. A custodian entered, spear glowing. The Emperor has stirred, he said, voice hollow. His light flickered for the first time in 10,000 years. His gaze turned to me. You will come. They led me through endless halls to a chamber that hurt. To look at machines of gold and bones surrounding a throne the size of a fortress. The smell of sanctified decay filled the air. At its center, the Emperor sat, a husk wrapped in godhood. Thousands of tubes fed into his form, each one pulsing faintly. Kale knelt. The priests wept. I stood for a heartbeat. The light around the throne pulsed again. Every sensor in the chamber screamed. Silence. A single, golden tear fell from the Emperor's withered eye. The Custodes gasped. Kale's lips trembled. He sees you. The tear hit the floor and hissed like acid. The air crackled with energy that burned my skin but didn't hurt. Something inside me responded, my claws extended, glowing faintly with the same golden light. The priests began chanting, voices frantic. The Saint of Iron. The deathless heir. Kale whispered, Logan, what are you? I stared at the Emperor's unmoving face, at the endless machinery keeping a dead god alive. Just a man, I said. One who's seen too much. The light faded. The heartbeat of the throne slowed. The priests knelt and wept. And somewhere deep inside me, a new voice whispered, not the warp, not the Emperor. Something older now. They will never let you go. The moment the Emperor stirred, one blink in 10,000 years, I stopped being a man. I became a symbol. Priests called me saint. Inquisitors called me asset. The Custodes called me blasphemy. I just wanted to stop bleeding. But symbols don't get to rest. They get paraded, tested, worshipped. They never let me leave Tara, not after that day, and feared. Kale kept me alive through the first weeks of interrogation. She fought the ecclesiarchs when they wanted to dissect me, stood between me and a firing squad when the Custodes demanded purification by fire. I didn't ask her to, she just believed. In what? I'm not sure. Maybe she saw in me what she needed, a reason. They built me quarters in the depths of the palace. A cage, really, gilded with gold and prayers. The walls whispered at night, not the warp. Millions of voices praying at once, every breath feeding the throne. The sound drove me half mad. You can drown in worship here. Thought then, the dreams started again. Sometimes I stood on a world made of blades. Sometimes I was drowning in oceans of blood. Sometimes I saw the Emperor's face twist, the gold flaking away to reveal something hollow, ancient, and hungry. And sometimes I saw Jean. She stood in the dark, her eyes full of fire. You don't belong here, Logan, she said. You were never meant to be their god. I didn't ask to be, I whispered. Then stop pretending to be one. I woke to alarms and thunder. Kale burst in, armor cracked, blood on her hands. The warp storm has breached Terra's edge. Something's coming through, something vast. Outside, the sky burned crimson. Warp light shimmered across the spires. From orbit came the sound of war, thousands of ships clashing, demons howling through the void. And beneath the palace, I felt it again, the pulse of the throne, louder than before. Kale's eyes were wide. The Emperor's psychic beacon is failing. If it dies, the Imperium falls. What do you need me for? You felt his call. You share his light. You might be the key to reigniting it. I stared at her. You're asking me to bleed for a god that's already dead. She grabbed my wrist. You were made to survive. Maybe that's all he ever needed. I looked out the window. The sky was splitting open. Demons poured through the rent like locusts. The Custodes were already mobilizing, their gold armor glinting in the firelight. And there, above it all, a shape descended, black wings made of warp fire, a shadow that blotted out the stars. Kale's voice broke. A demon primarch, Angron. I remembered the name from her reports. The Red Angel, the Butcher of News. A monster even the gods feared. He fell upon the city like a meteor, roaring Khorne's name. His scream shook the palace itself. Blood for the blood god. Even the throne will burn. The Custodes fell back. The air ignited. Kale turned to me. Logan, if you are the Emperor's weapon, now is the time to prove it. I took a breath. The old ache stirred in my bones. The beast rose in my chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe all I ever was, in any world, was a weapon looking for a war. Open the gate, I said. Kale hesitated. If you go out there, I'm already gone. She pressed her rosarius to the lock. The gates of the sanctum opened, light flooding in like judgment. The streets of the Imperial Palace were chaos custodies, clashing with demons, tanks burning, prayers turning to screams. I waded through it, claws out, eyes fixed on the red titan tearing through the gates. Angron stood taller than buildings, his armor a living wound, his laughter the sound of dying suns. When his gaze fell on me, the air itself split, another to bleed. "Yeah," I said. "Try me." I leaped, claws flashing. He met me mid-air, his chain axe screaming like a choir of agony. The impact shattered the plaza. Stone turned to dust. My body broke a dozen times before it healed again. We fought in silence, broken only by the sound of metal and fury. Every hit from him was like being hit by a tank. Every cut I made sealed instantly, only to open again. But something burned inside me, light, gold, and terrible. The same light I'd seen in the throne room. My claws glowed, not with warp fire but something purer. Angron's laughter faltered. "What are you still figuring that out?" I drove my claws into his chest. Gold met red. For a moment, the sky itself stopped screaming. The light spread, tearing through the demon's body, consuming it from within. Angron roared, flailing, his wings disintegrating into ash. "You cannot kill what is eternal." "Maybe not," I said, twisting deeper, "but I can make you hurt." The explosion lit all of terror. When I came to, the battlefield was silent. The sky was clear. The warp storm was gone. I was on my knees, the ground scorched around me. Kale stood nearby, her armor cracked, her face streaked with tears. Behind her, the custodies knelt one by one. "The Emperor breathes," one whispered. The beacon burns bright again. I looked toward the palace. Golden light poured from every window, pure and blinding. The throne was alive. Kale knelt beside me. "He used you. Story of my life." She smiled sadly. "What will you do now?" I looked at my claws. The glow was fading. "Same thing I always do. Keep walking wherever they ain't worshipping me." She reached for my arm. "They'll never stop. You're legend now." I pulled free gently. "Then I'll be their ghost instead." As I walked away, the wind carried the chants of a billion souls. Saint of iron, savior of blood. I didn't listen. The last thing I saw before disappearing into the shadowed streets was the golden light flickering once more across the horizon. A dying god holding on for one more breath and a broken man who refused to dot in the grim darkness of the far future. There is only war, but sometimes there's also someone too stubborn to die. They called me Saint now. I didn't ask for the name, but it spread like fire through dry bones. Every hive world, every shrine planet whispers of the man who bled golden light. Some painted murals of me cutting down demons beside angels. Some built shrines of melted shell casings in my image. The ecclesiarchy sold relics my claws, they claimed, or drops of my immortal blood. All lies. But in a galaxy choking on faith, a good lie breathes longer than truth. I hid for years after Terra. Kale was the only one who knew where I went. She smuggled me out under false rites, disguising me as a penitent crusader. We traveled through the warp aboard a rusted pilgrim barge named the Benediction of Iron. Inside, the smell of burnt oil and fear was the same as any trench I'd fought in. These people, old, blind, broken, they didn't know who I was. That's what I liked about them. They just prayed to survive the next warp jump. But peace doesn't stick to me. It peels off like skin. The first time I heard the screams, I thought it was memory. Then the walls of the ship began to move. Flesh melted through steel. The air turned copper, and the laughter, that low, echoing, endless laughter seeped through every bolt and rivet. Warp breach. Demons poured in like maggots through a wound. The pilgrims were torn apart before they could even pray. I tore my claws out of my hands, a sound like blades cutting through bone. And I fought, for hours, days, maybe. Every demon I killed turned to ash that whispered my name. "Logan," they hissed, "the lost son of war." Their voices crawled inside my skull. I saw visions while I fought, fields of skulls, rivers of blood, worlds burning where the stars used to be. I saw him again, the Emperor burning gold, seated on his throne of bones. His eyes were closed, but his mouth moved. "You are my weapon still," he said. "Do not deny your nature." I roared until my throat tore open. "I ain't your weapon, not anymore." When I came to, the ship was silent, the hull torn open, bodies floating in the void. I was the only thing left breathing. The Benediction drifted for weeks before an Imperial patrol found it. They hailed me as a miracle, dragged me back to Segmentum Solar, and threw me before another tribunal of the Inquisition. The same old questions. What are you? A mutant, a Xenos, a divine sign, I said nothing. So they locked me in a cathedral made of iron. They starved me. They prayed over me. They even tried to cut me open once, but the blades melted in their hands. Then Kale came again. She'd aged scarred, tired, still loyal. She told me what I didn't want to hear. You can't hide forever. Logan, the galaxy's tearing itself apart. Demon incursions across half the set. The throne's light flickers, and the people they're praying to you now. Tell M to stop. You think they'll listen? You gave them something they haven't had in 1,000 years. Prove that something fights back. I turned away. I ain't their hope. I'm just the thing that kills what crawls out of the dark. She stepped closer. Maybe that's all the Emperor ever needed. There it was, again the same damn word. Emperor. As if the galaxy was a child that couldn't let go of its father. I laughed, bitter and raw. You think he's still up there, Kale? Still watching? He's a corpse plugged into a chair, feeding off psychers like batteries. You call that God? She didn't flinch. You call yourself better. The silence after that cut deeper than any blade. That night, I dreamed again. But not of the warp, not of the throne. I dreamed of Canada, of snow, of trees whispering in the wind. For the first time in centuries, it didn't feel like a memory, it felt like a promise. A place that wasn't poisoned by faith or war. Maybe somewhere out there, past the rim, there were still worlds untouched by this madness. When I woke, Kale was gone. The door was open. A note carved into the wall with a knife. If you won't fight for them, at least disappear before they crucify you. So I did. I stole a ship from the docks of Holy Mars. It wasn't much, an old cargo hauler reworked for mining runs. I flew it blind. Through storms, through silence, until the stars thinned and the Astronomicon faded to a whisper. Out here, there's no God, no warp, just the hum of the engines and the memory of claws cutting through monsters. I heal slower now. The air's colder, but I think this is what peace feels like. Somewhere behind me, the galaxy's still burning. Maybe they'll remember me as a savior, maybe as a curse. Doesn't matter, because out here, there's no more war to fight. Just a man, a ship, and the silence he's been chasing since he was human. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. There's a kind of silence out here that hurts. Not the quiet of peace, but the absence of everything. No warp whispers, no vox chatter, no heartbeats but my own. Just the endless hum of the engines and the creak of a ship built to die centuries ago. I've been drifting for what feels like years, chasing nothing, maybe running, doesn't matter anymore. The stars are thinning, and the light of the Astronomicon has long since gone dark behind me. The galaxy doesn't even know I exist. Maybe that's for the best. Sometimes I wake up in the dark thinking I still hear Kale's voice steady.com, full of that damn faith she never let go of. I remember the way she said my name before she left me, Logan, like it meant something worth saving. No one's said it like that since. Now the ship's machine spirit is my only companion, a broken vox ghost that hums in binary prayers. I call it Old Red. It answers when it wants to, stuttering through static hymns. Sometimes I think it understands me better than anyone back on Terra ever did. Food ran out months ago. Doesn't matter. My body doesn't need much anymore. The healing factor keeps me walking long after hunger stops meaning anything. But it doesn't fix the dreams. The nightmares are different, now quieter, sharper. Not demons, not angels, just memories. Jean's face, the weight of the claws sliding from my hands, the smell of burning metal and blood. I used to think the worst thing in life was not being able to die. Now I think it's outliving the meaning of your fight. One night, if you can still call it that, when there's no sun, I saw something outside the view. A planet, small and grey, floating like a scar across the void. No Imperial markings, no signals. Just there waiting. I didn't plan to land, but the ship made the choice for me. The engines coughed, sputtered, then gave out completely. I laughed when it happened. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just bad luck. Out here, it's the same thing. The planet's surface was dead. No wind, no sound. Just dust stretching to the horizon. I walked for hours, leaving footprints that the air refused to erase. The sky was a black mirror, no stars, no warp shimmer. Just the cold reflection of my own face staring back at me. I knelt once, pressed my claws into the soil. It didn't scream this time. It just accepted me. For the first time in forever, the world didn't fight back. That's when I felt it. A heartbeat, not mine. Deep beneath the ground, faint and steady like something sleeping. I dug the dirt. It was cold as iron, but I kept going. A mile down, maybe more, I found it, a machine, old as the stars. A sarcophagus of black stone, marked with symbols I didn't recognize. It wasn't human. It wasn't chaos, it was something else. When I touched it, it opened. Not with a hiss or light but a whisper. A voice I hadn't heard since the day the rift took me. "You have walked far, Logan." I staggered back, heart hammering. "You again?" "You sought silence, and found the end of it." The air shimmered. A figure took shape, silver tall, faceless, like a reflection that forgot what it was supposed to be. It wasn't the Emperor, wasn't a demon either. It felt older than both. "What are you?" I asked. "We are what remains when gods are gone." "Figures," I spat. "And what do you want with me?" "Nothing. You've already given enough. But we can offer what you've been denied." I didn't have to ask. I knew. For the first time, the idea didn't scare me. I sheathed my claws. "Then let's get it over with." The figure tilted its head. "Death is not the end, Wolverine. Not for those who carried the fire. But rest. Yes, rest can be given." Light began to rise from the cracks in the ground, soft blue, like dawn through smoke. My bones ached. My vision blurred. I sank to my knees, feeling the weight lift at last. The pain, the memories, the war, all of it peeled away like rust. I thought of Kale, of Jean, of the forests of Alberta, of the sound of my own heartbeat when I still cared if it stopped. And for the first time in centuries, I smiled as the light swallowed me. The figure spoke one last time. "Even in this galaxy, where hope is ash and gods are broken, the fire remembers its spark." And then there was nothing. No pain, no fear, no sound, just peace. They say in the years that followed, a new light flickered on the edges of the voids, more steady, guiding lost ships through the black. Pilgrims called it the Saint's Lantern. The Mechanicus called it a phenomenon. The Inquisition called it heresy. But to those who traveled far enough to see it for themselves, it looked like 3 shining claws tearing through the dark.